as organizations mature in the cloud, there are some areas where people are going to come to the realization that not everything belongs in the cloud, or the costs of moving to the cloud aren't worth the expense. Governance didn't need to be as stringent when you were running internally in terms of IT, but governance as to what you can do in the cloud has not been fully addressed.
Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FinOps in Action. Today, I'm really excited towards the episode because we have a guest with tons of experience. He actually has over 30 years of experience at the forefront of enterprise transformation. He comes from a TBM background, but later on he moved to FinOps. He established multiple FinOps governance framework and led to savings of over $150 million across the board. I'm happy to welcome Senior Enterprise Architect at T-Mobile, Peter Brauer. Peter, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Alon?
I'm doing absolutely great. Peter, please tell us, what is the one thing you got wrong when you started your FinOps career?
Focusing on the known spend of FinOps and not taking into account the impact of shadow IT, both just from a financial operations aspect, but just a general IT aspect overall.
Okay, that's fascinating. And how did you find out about shadow IT and the importance of it and the impact of that on cost?
Well, going back to TBM, one of the things that was always a problem was the shadow IT. The department's marketing or sales or, even in development shops where an enterprising associate would, find a machine to hide under their desk and build the department database on. It was manageable in a network, trying to hide server hardware or powerful enough machines, or when machines got, when the applications on the machines got more involved, those would come to the attention of IT, and the problems with IT in general around just IT backlogs and responsiveness to the needs of the organization, new employees with new ideas, trying to bring things up. That was a TBM focus, was finding all of those systems, looking at them, how they'd show up on the network and tracking them down and managing the costs around it and understanding them. When I made the transition to FinOps, focusing really on the cloud costs, lost sight of that. And in doing that, that's actually, in my opinion, and in some other ones, that one of the most critical areas of expense that gets overlooked.
So Peter, you mentioned your transition from TBM to FinOps. Can you share with us how it happened?
Well, one of my roles was transformation, and a huge part of transformation was the transformation from traditional, metal on the racks, server costs, internal costs, and transforming organizations into the 21st century, which inevitably is a migration to the cloud. As that accelerated, the spend shifted. You move the expenses from being server room based to being cloud based. You have to change your thinking and your approach. So I started looking into FinOps, not really as a discipline, and went from it being, something that I had to account for and understand to being a more disciplined approach, because that was really what the organizations that are undergoing transformation need.
And beside the fact that you need to be more disciplined with the cloud, because obviously it's very easy to spin up new resources and increase costs very quickly, do you see FinOps as something that is completely different than TBM or just another flavor within TBM?
I see it as something being a little different in how it's applied. The focus areas are different, and they can be very serious. The need for increased security in a FinOps environment when you're dealing with the cloud in general, the hidden costs, the again getting back to the shadow IT costs, those have exploded as we've moved to the cloud. And that represents a much larger portion of FinOps and FinOps governance than it ever did before we were in the cloud.
Okay, that's very interesting. And you feel that FinOps will remain a standalone separate practice, or will it merge with TBM in the future?
I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see a hybridization of it. We're going to see, as organizations mature in the cloud, there are some areas where people are going to come to the realization that not everything belongs in the cloud, or the costs of moving to the cloud aren't worth the expense. TBM focuses on the cost of IT versus the business value of IT. FinOps tends to focus more on managing the cost of IT in and of itself. And I believe that FinOps has to focus on, again, the business value of being returned for the cost of being in the cloud. Just because you're in the cloud, it does not make financial sense always to do so.
And I would also guess that some decisions on the enterprise level you need to make between cloud and non-cloud. So you have to make these decisions, you need to blend these two practices together to make the most intelligent decision.
Absolutely. FinOps focuses on the operations in the cloud of the systems in the cloud and how they're being used. TBM focuses on the larger picture of the entire cost of the towers and how the cost is spent from your indirect dollars to your direct dollars. Again, returning your cost per transaction is not enough to just manage the costs for the replacement of the hardware. It's all of those other systems and environments that go into that and managing those.
And do you think it's always the right move to go to the cloud, or not always?
Not always. I'm a big proponent of the cloud. I don't want to sound like a Luddite here. The advantage of the cloud is its flexibility, its ability to move swiftly and respond to disruptions in the industries. But when you look at the costs that have been invested in an organization's data center and the hardware in the data center, especially when you're dealing with larger organizations that may have mainframe systems that have been running for 30 or 40 years, and then you layer on top of that regulatory requirements around the data that's being held in those systems and all of the customizations to really take those old mainframe systems and create the secret sauce of whatever the organization is. The cost to move it to the cloud to replicate the business when it's a core function of the business, you've already sunk those costs as an organization, and your cost per transaction has gone down. You've amortized those expenses, and you're basically running for the price of the electricity. When you move these types of things to the cloud, those choices are not necessarily as black and white. Putting things in the cloud is expensive. Putting things in the cloud is inexpensive. Getting things out of the cloud, the data, interacting with the things in the cloud, that's where your cost is. Everybody wants your data in their system.
So it's kind of a one-way decision. So if you make this decision, it's very hard to go back. So you have to be very careful and very deliberate when you make a decision like that.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And that also increases the risks to other systems in a complex enterprise.
That's very interesting. And Peter, I would love to get deeper into FinOps. And you mentioned the importance of discipline when managing cloud. And that also is tied very, very well to governance. So basically to make sure you have discipline. You need to have strong governance in place. This is something that you and I have discussed in the past. And I'm curious just to hear from your experience, how is it like when you don't have governance? Like, what are the problems that you're facing when there isn't a strong governance in place?
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to go back to the example that I use a lot of times in really justifying the FinOps discipline in general to leaders. Um, 15 years ago, when I believe it was CIO magazine did an average cost per user, for mid-sized companies, 250 to 1,000 employees. The cost of shadow IT within an organization ran around $100 per employee. In any organization, the cost of the shadow IT to the enterprise in terms of either hardware, software licensing, those types of things, was approximately $100 per employee per year. Proactive did a survey 2 years ago in 2023. The average cost for employee of shadow IT is now $400 to $800 a year, depending on how intensely they're using the cloud.
Wow.
So you're seeing a 400% increase at a minimum of shadow IT expenses. When you're looking at a 1,000-person organization at an average of, call it $580 per employee, that's a significant cost. And that cost, in all likelihood, is not going to show up in your standard FinOps audit approach, where you're looking at your cost for your known systems. Governance didn't need to be as stringent when you were running internally in terms of IT, but governance as to what you can do in the cloud has not been fully addressed in cloud-based organization. And the ability to quickly spin up a service, to quickly put some data that you need in the cloud, to, put on your personal or departmental expense, a new SaaS license to do something that may be business critical. These are slipping through expense reporting and reimbursement because they show up as very small amounts that usually don't get tracked and are probably getting registered in the organization as subscriptions by accounting or finance. So they're not even accounted for in the general FinOps realm of data that's being tracked.
And Peter, give us a few tips how to handle with effective governance frameworks the long tail of all the small resources that you pay for, and it's very, very hard to track and very, very hard to remove.
Absolutely. Well, there are tools that can be used around watching your cloud usage. You can look at, your access logs, SSO logs, those types of things. Somebody's moved something into the cloud themselves, they're probably still having to provide some sort and form of authentication. And so that's one way you can find this. You need to have governance around that. But first, you need to establish governance around you can't do that, right? So the issue there comes in between governance and enforcement. Governance by itself doesn't do any good. More important, though, especially with the speed that cloud moves, is use those data. Don't make it a prescriptive set of governance. Instead, use the data of the governance. Enterprise architecture, CIOs should be looking at what shadow IT is doing, because that's going to identify the trends for the next strategic directions of things that need to be done. And I say that because you may govern and have rules around what services can be used, how you can access it, and those types of things. But again, AAG did a survey last year and established that over 50% of all SaaS contracts, licenses for cloud-based services are not being utilized by organizations. they're buying a license and then not taking advantages of the licenses that they use. So those become expenses that are basically sunk cost. You're not getting any value from it whatsoever. So governance also has to provide guidance of, you want to use a service in the cloud, here's the list of approved services and how you access them. Logging and tracking around those things. So governance is important to keep people within the guardrail, but you have to be clear about what those guardrails are, and you have to be flexible to change them when necessary. Services that nobody ever thought of, nobody was using 18 months ago. There's brand new stuff all the time coming online, and you have to keep abreast of those things. As the business changes to take advantage of the benefits, the IT needs have to move alongside them. So the IT structure itself, the guidelines and governance should be something that makes it easier to work rather than being so prescriptive that you're driving people into that shadow IT need.
Very interesting. And you mentioned creating the governance framework and also doing enforcement. Can you share with me maybe an example of a policy, how you track the performance against the policy and how you enforce it?
Sure. I'm going to go back to, what I was saying earlier. You need to be using tools like Better Cloud, Trelica. I'm not endorsing any of these. These are just the ones that are used. CoreView, if you're a heavily Microsoft 365 organization. Evaluate those logs and look at what SaaS services are being used. Do your audits around that. Provide your governance that direct you towards those services. But you also, within the governance, you have to have, it's not enough to simply say you can't do this, okay? Because if you say that you can't do this, experience and history shows that people will just find a way to do it without being discovered. So governance has to include remediation. When you create the guidelines, when you create your governance framework, you have to be sure that it includes a remediation pathway for things that are existing outside government. If you're using this service as opposed to an approved service, here's the requirements around the governance framework. You must be doing this and you must do it within this time frame. But people do what they're comfortable with. If you're telling somebody through governance rule that they can't do it that way, provide them with the alternative and provide them with the assistance either to prove their business case for why they have to use that service or make the transition from the service that they're using to one that falls within the governance framework. So that's why, penalties or problems or shutting things down doesn't work. There's the saying, if you build a better mousetrap, you're just going to wind up with smarter mice. And that's the problem. You have to make sure that you're providing a big enough hunk of cheese that people will come and stay within those guardrails.
Interesting.
That was a really weird metaphor. I apologize.
Yes. And, when we're talking about the remediation is typically when, I've found an issue, I need to fix it, and okay, let's take care of it and find the most efficient remediation path. Some people will say, okay, it's not only about the remediation, maybe we can actually prevent the issues from happening to begin with. If you have some experience with also thinking about how you create guardrail that would prevent issues from happening?
Absolutely. And that's where, your systems come into things like cloud access security brokers, CASVs. You can bring these into an organization. And what these are going to do is their security first. They limit the access from your networks to the clouds, and they funnel approvals and management. Tools like Prisma, Cloud, Palo Alto's Prisma Cloud or Netscope, these types of systems that will do it. That's great, but you also have to take into account your the impact of the remote workers. They may not be on your network. They may not be in a locked down environment. They still have access. So again, what you have to make sure that you're doing is you're monitoring trends and patterns, right? If you know a system, and this is again where your governance and your monitoring come in. If you know a system is a data intensive system, either inbound or outbound data, start looking at, has the usage of the data gone down dramatically? That's an indicator that the data, and if the business is still functioning, that's an indicator that the data is being accessed in a manner that is outside the guardrails, right? So you have to look at the indicators of these things. If your sales are going up, but your site usage statistics are not, if your inquiries are going up and your site statistics are not, or if they're going down, right? But your business is staying the same. These are indicators that something is happening outside of the proper structure of IT and what will fall within the governance parameter. So those are flags that you can look at.
So basically, governance is not only on the technical level, it's also on the business level. So you want to create a framework that take into consideration how much you spend versus how the business looks like. And if there are deviations from your efficiency, that also may be a broken governance framework.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not just enough to look at your IT spend or your IT savings. Forbes magazine was talking about the fact that on average, IT spend goes usually about 30% over budget for most organizations on a yearly basis. So that's a very easy target, right? You go, well, we've got to reduce our spend by 30% so that we're hitting our targets. And then they bring in a FinOps specialist who does a couple of things and not just saves 30%, but cuts 40 or 50% off of the annual spend. And now you're hitting targets and everybody's happy. Great. Where did those costs go? Where did those costs disappear to? It's not enough to say that, oh, we made this change and this change and this change, and we're realizing the savings. How did you realize the change? What did you do? What was the lever you pulled, right? So, for example, if you can show that, well, turning off systems when they're idle, improving our elasticity or our scalability, just those things, those saved money. Reserved instances, other savings contracts, those saved money. How did you do that, though? And does that really trace? A 30% reduction in idle time in the cloud, does that actually trace to a 30% reduction in your IT cloud spend? Right? It's not enough to have numbers that matter. Because you may be falling prey to bias confirmation. If I reduce this by 30%, my costs will go down by 30%. Okay. Did I reduce this by 30% and only actually save 10%? And the other 20% came because I've done other things. FinOps has to look at the big picture all the time and really try and come up with as close to a one-to-one traceability of cost. That goes back to the TBM model and the TBM learning, right? It wasn't enough to look for your cost of IT. You had to look at your cost for your contracts, your cost for employees, your cost for electricity to power the room. All of these costs get bundled into a single number when you're dealing with the cloud, right? Microsoft, for example, with 365, they charge a per seat license fee. That covers your software, that covers your server space, that covers your storage, your CPU, all of that. So you can't tease those costs apart anymore and manage them the way you used to with the level of granularity. But you still have to account for how the dollars are being spent.
That's absolutely fascinating. Peter, and thank you so much for sharing all of your experience on TBM, FinOps, governance. It was really, really interesting. I learned a lot. And Peter, I want to make sure we also have time to get to know you more on the personal level, not only on the professional level. And let's start with where you live today. So you live today in Georgetown, South Carolina. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, it is. It is a small town, third oldest town in South Carolina, located on the coast between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Named for Prince George before he became King George, who was king when the United States was formed.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting fact. And how did you get to Georgetown, South Carolina?
It's a quiet place on the coast, protected on the south by national forest and on the north by research forest. So we're able to have access to all of the wonderful things of the South Carolina Low Country without a lot of the people. So very, very historical. I'm about 500 yards from where General Lafayette landed when he brought the French to the United States for the Revolutionary War.
And I'm sure it's also great weather over there.
Usually, except in hurricane season, but it's been quiet so far this year, knock on wood.
So, except the hurricanes, it's great weather.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very nice, very nice. And South Carolina is really beautiful. So, I'm sure you're enjoying that as well.
We love it. We love it. We're here with our dogs and our cats. Um, Several of our children still live near it. So it's a great place for a family.
Dogs and cats. How many dogs and cats do you have?
I have two boxers, um, a male and a female. And last year on Mother's Day, the female boxer showed up with what we thought was a rabbit. It was a 4-week-old, 2.5-ounce kitten, whose mother, we believe it was either an eagle or an alligator, got the mother. So we found the kitten and her sister, and we've raised them, and they became part of the family as well.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful.
The cat distribution network.
That's cool. And if I ask you what would be a book or a movie you recommend, what would you say?
Well, so I tend to gravitate towards hard science fiction. I loved the book, The Martian, for the realistic use of science. And the movie version of it, I think, is one of the best movies, not just from a science fiction, but just from a general performance. I thought it was great. I'm really looking forward to the new one that's coming out, Hail Mary, with from Anywhere. The book was great, and it'll be interesting to see how they do it with the movie.
That's cool. I actually haven't seen the movie nor read the book.
Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
I should get to it, absolutely.
The goal is that all of the science, even though it's science fiction, is actually legitimate science.
Wow. That's cool. Okay. I will definitely have a look. And things you like to do outside of work?
I like to read and I like to travel. My wife and I are big in doing repositioning cruises. So we'll either cruise from the United States to Europe or from Europe back to the United States. Travel tip, it's a great 2-week vacation and usually very inexpensive.
No, traveling is always a lot of fun. Absolutely. Peter, I've learned a lot. It's clear that you have tons of experience in the space.
Thank you.
I wonder if our listeners want to reach out to you, ask questions, what is the best way to do that?
They can absolutely reach me via email, peter.brauer, Brauer, at outlook.com. They can search for me by my email on Medium where I publish articles with some regularity, and on Reddit as well.
Cool. You heard him. Email, Medium, go for it. Peter, I'm personally very fascinated both on where TBM and FinOps are going and about governance in general, topics that really, keep me thinking all the time. So thank you very much for sharing all your insights around that. To me, it was really, really fascinating. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Alon.
For sure. And I would also like to thank our listeners for joining us once again to FinOps in Action. Hope you had a lot of fun and learned a lot just as much as I did. Peter, thank you again. This has been another exciting, fascinating episode of FinOps in Action. See you next time. That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action.